Right now, there's a practice you're probably forcing yourself to do because every doctor, therapist, and wellness guru told you is the ultimate cure for anxiety. You sit down, you try to clear your head, and you try to breathe. But instead of feeling calm, your heart rate actually speeds up, your chest gets tighter, and you end up feeling more panicked than when you started. You think you're just bad at it, but you're not, because mindfulness and meditation are like trimming the leaves of a weed. It looks like progress on the surface, but the root is still there growing underneath. Brain scans have now proven exactly why. In this video, I'm gonna show you the hidden electrical signals that is making this healthy habit backfire and a proven way to actually turn that signal off. The absolute worst thing you can do when you have chronic anxiety is the exact thing that everyone tells you is the best thing to do. Just sit quietly, close your eyes, and focus on your breath. That's the universal advice. Mindfulness is supposed to be this super healthy habit because you want to lower your stress, right? But it can actually be one of the worst things you can do for your anxiety. And just hear me out before you click away, because I completely and utterly believe meditation has the ability to cure for years. I had patients meditating for hours every week, trying to find their zen, and they were still stuck in the exact same anxiety loop. Here's what's actually happening. You're going through your day and your brain is constantly communicating with itself and your body. It does this through electrical impulses called brainwaves. Think of brainwaves like gears on a bicycle. When you're sleeping deeply, your brain is in a low gear. When you're relaxed and focused, you're in a cruising gear. But when you're actively thinking, problem solving, or reacting to stress, your brain shifts into a high gear called beta waves. Beta waves are your brain's alert and active frequency. In healthy amounts, they're perfectly normal. They help you get your work done and keep you safe in dangerous situations. When you have chronic anxiety, your brain gets stuck in overdrive. It starts producing an excess of high frequency beta waves, and it literally forgets how to shift back down. So locked in a constant state of hypervigilance. It is basically a smoke detector that never turns off. And this isn't just a theory. A major 2026 study published in Psychiatric Interventions looked at the brain mapping of patients with panic and anxiety disorders. They found that these patients showed significantly higher beta power across all regions of the brain compared to healthy people. Another massive clinical study published in Dementia and Neuropsychologica found that when a patient's beta waves exceeded a certain threshold, over 90% of them experienced clinical anxiety, fear, and panic. The brain waves were literally trapped in a pattern that prevented calm. Everything works fine enough when you're busy because all that fast, anxious electrical activity is being directed towards outward to your work, your phone, or your daily tasks. Your busyness is actually acting as emotional insulation. But when you decide to meditate, you sit down, you shut your eyes off, and you stop that outward process. You shut the door on all external distractions. And what it's doing to your brain is not just forcing it to relax, actually taking all of that high-speed, high-alert electrical energy and trapping it inside a still body. Your nervous system is still screaming danger, but now you've taken away the distraction. You're taking a brain that is running at 100 miles an hour in a high beta mode and slamming the brakes on the body. The most important thing about this entire process, which is why mindfulness backfires, is that when you turn your attention inward, your brain starts scanning your own body for threats. You're suddenly hyper-focused on your own physiology. It's true that noticing your breath can be relaxing if your nervous system is already regulated. This would be an acceptable practice if you had just normal, everyday stress. Some people also do light stretching or yoga, which is fine. Other people might do deep breathing exercises and think that's a very healthy thing to do to calm down. But the problem with these practices is that they require introception, the ability to feel what's inside your body. And if you're locked in a high beta state, what's happening inside your body is a racing heart, shallow breathing, and muscle tension. So when you focus inward, your brain picks up those signals of tension as threats and treats them as hard scientific evidence that something's terribly wrong. It's almost like trying to get rid of a weed by trimming the leaves instead of getting rid of the root. You're trying to force relaxation on the surface, but the root mechanism, the electrical hyperarousal in your brain, is just being amplified because you're shining a spotlight directly on the symptoms of panic. The harder you try to relax, the more your brain perceives the stillness itself as a threat, and your anxiety spikes even further. Understanding that beta waves are driving your anxiety is only half the picture. The other half is knowing that not all anxiety looks the same at the same neurological level. And this is the exact reason why the same advice, the same medication, and the same therapy works for some people and makes others feel completely hopeless. There are two distinct brainwave patterns that drive anxiety, and they produce entirely different experiences. The first one is one we just covered, excess high beta activity. When beta runs too high for too long, the anxiety it produces is loud and restless. Racing thoughts you can't switch off. A mind that will not slow down even when your body's exhausted. You feel like you are always bracing for something even when nothing's wrong. This is also the pattern that medication makes worse. for exactly the reason we talked about. You're taking a brain already running at full electrical speed and asking it to sit still. That energy has to go somewhere. So it turns inward, amplifies, and that stillness itself becomes the threat. The second pattern is low alpha. Alpha waves are your brain's natural off switch, the frequency of calm, present, relaxed awareness. When alpha is suppressed, the brain loses its ability to self-regulate. It can't transition out of its stress on its own. This shows up not as loud racing anxiety, but as low-grade worry that never fully lifts, like a background noise you've learned to live with, but can never quite escape. So your doctor can run the same diagnosis on paper without knowing that you have a different pattern causing anxiety from the inside. And the treatment that helps one pattern can actually make the other worse. Medication, deep breathing, and mindfulness practices can be generally useful for someone with suppressed alpha because those practices encourage the brain towards exactly the frequency it's missing. For someone with excess beta, that same practice is pouring fuel on the fire. This is why so many people spend years doing everything right and still feel stuck. They're not failing the treatment is failing to match the pattern that is actually driving the anxiety, and your doctor cannot see this. It does not show up on a standard clinical assessment. There's no blood test for it. So what happens is that two completely different people with two completely different neurological patterns walk out of the same office with the same diagnosis and the same prescription. The only way to fix this is by knowing which patterns are dysregulated in the first place. So how do you find out which pattern is driving your anxiety? The only way to know is to look directly at the brain's electrical activity using a QEEG brain map. A QEEG reads the electrical activity across your brain and produces a detailed map of exactly what's happening, which frequencies are dominant, which regions are overactive or underactive, and how different parts of the brain are communicating with each other. It reads the brain's own electrical signature directly, which means for the first time, you have an objective picture of what's actually driving your anxiety. It shows whether alpha is suppressed and in which regions, giving a direct window into the brain's capacity to self-regulate and transition out of stress. Brain mapping isn't a treatment in itself. It's the diagnostic tool that has always been missing from anxiety care. Because without knowing which pattern is driving your anxiety, you cannot follow any therapy, medication, or lifestyle intervention appropriately. Because brain mapping gives you the information you need to build a treatment plan that is actually designed around your brain rather than the average of everyone else's. But it only shows you the pattern. It doesn't fix them. To fix those patterns and bring your brain back into balance, you need something called neurofeedback. It's a non-invasive form of biofeedback that monitors brainwave activity so your brain can actually self-regulate. Using the QEEG brain map as the guide, neurofeedback trains your brain in real time to shift away from the frequencies driving your anxiety. If XX beta is the problem, protocol trains the brain to reduce high frequency activity and rebuilds its capacity for a calmer state. If suppressed alpha is the issue, the sessions work to strengthen that frequency. Session by session, the brain receives live feedback on its own activity and learns to operate differently. Neurofeedback is one of the most powerful tools for anxiety treatment. The research behind it is solid, the results it produces are real, and it can be completely life-changing. But the therapy alone is not enough for everyone, because just like anxiety itself, the path out of it is not the same for every person. Some people need nutritional support alongside neurofeedback because their brain chemistry is so depleted to respond efficiently to the training. If your magnesium is chronically low, your brain's primary calming mechanism is already compromised before a single session begins. Some people need continued medication in the short term, not as a long-term solution, but as a stabilizer that keeps symptoms manageable enough to do the deeper work. And some might need advanced tools like peptide therapy to support neural repair and reduce the neural inflammation that is quietly driving their anxiety underneath everything else. The brainwave pattern is the target, but the brain sitting inside a depleted, inflamed body is going to fight that process every step of the way. This is where Vive Wellness Brain Bloom program comes in. It's a complete anxiety treatment program that addresses every layer of the problem because we've seen too many patients who did neurofeedback, felt some improvement, and then plateaued because the underlying body conditions were never addressed. We've seen the difference it makes when everything works together at the same time. The program starts with your QEEG brain map because everything else is built on what that map reveals. From there, we don't just design a neurofeedback protocol, we design a full personalized roadmap that accounts for your specific brainwave patterns. If your brain needs nutritional support to create the right environment for neurofeedback to work, if short-term medication makes sense as a stabilizer during the early phase of treatment, we work with that. If peptide therapy is indicated to support neural recovery, that's on the table too. Every element is chosen based upon what your brain and body actually need. If you want to experience it for yourself, or just want to know more about how it can help you, the link is in the description below.